All right, so today we're going to talk about aging. So, what is aging? Yeah. The accumulation of changes over time. Yeah, that's exactly it. Aging is basically the accumulation of changes over time. It's not like, oh, I'm 37 now, so I have aged more. It's how much changes you've accumulated in the time that you've lived. This is like the definition of velocity, right? The definition of velocity is the change in position over time, right? So right now I'm here, sometime later I'm here. The velocity was, I don't know, whatever it is, 1 mile an hour. But just like velocity, I can be here, and then here, I traveled with a greater velocity. Similarly, aging can occur at different rates. So for some people, aging occurs very, very, very rapidly. Other people, aging really doesn't occur very rapidly at all. And we'll talk about different types of aging. So individuals that age very, very rapidly, what disease can cause this? Progeria, yeah. So this person, it might look like it's some 80-year-old grandpa, but this is actually a kid. So it's a kid who looks like they're very much older, right? They have wrinkles, they've lost teeth, they have white hair. So aging can progress at different times for different people. So we can talk about different types of aging. We can talk about mental age. Remember when we talked about that? So some people seem like they're able to do mental things, cognitive tasks, mathematics, language, at a much higher level than their peers might be able to. We can talk about physical aging. So this person, even though mentally they have aged like a child, so they still enjoy doing things that other kids like to do, physically they've gotten much, much older. We can also age socially or emotionally. So a few classes ago when I talked about how women and men sometimes talk about one another and they say like, oh, there are no good guys or girls here at this university. They all act like they're 12. A lot of times they're talking about emotional type of maturity. So what are some older adult stereotypes? Old people can cook very well?
That's what they do.
Okay, yeah, I'll buy that. I mean, who cooks the best cookies in the world? My grandma. The best spaghetti? Grandma. Best lasagna? My grandpa? Okay, maybe. I hadn't heard of that one before. Anything else? What were you saying?
They don't remember things.
Yeah, old people, they can't remember anything, right?
Slow.
They're slow. Yeah, so like when I talk on the phone to my grandpa is handling all my financial affairs back in the States. So he gets my mail, and then we talk to each other on the phone. And I say, okay, Grandpa, what bills do I have to pay? And then I pay them through the bank and everything. So, like, he'll say, okay, I got a letter today, and the letter was from Google. And he's like, for more information, you can go to, there's a whole bunch of crazy letters here, H, T, T, P. Yeah, Grandpa, I know, H, T, T, P. Yeah, I got it. So slow. And other times, he'll tell me about some bill that I have. Okay, so you have the mortgage bill for this month. Have you paid this yet? Yes, Grandpa, I paid that. Okay, good. Oh, you have this other bill. And then right after he tells me about the other bill, then he'll tell me about the mortgage again. Yeah, Grandpa, we just talked about that. So old people, they're slow, they can't remember, they cook well. They can get hurt easily. So if they fall over, they're much more likely to get injured. Anything else?
They're difficult.
Difficult in what way?
They're difficult to be okay. There's some kids playing, not stand there.
So they're ornery. Yeah, they like don't like to be bothered. You kids get out of my lawn. Yeah. Anything else? They become more conservative? Okay, maybe. I don't know the data on that. If you guys had to guess more conservative or less conservative, how many of you would say more conservative? How many of you would say less conservative? Okay, so The data, at least in this classroom, backs up that the stereotype is more conservative. All right. Anything else?
They hear differently.
They can't hear well? You say, Grandma, I love you. Happy Mother's Day. What? So there are lots and lots of stereotypes. Notice, I'm saying these are stereotypes. These are things that are not necessarily true, but that people generally believe and attribute to older adults, not taking into the fact that there's a lot of individual variation. So they're slow, they have poor hearing, they're lonely, they just sit at home and they knit all day long, they don't have sex, they're senile, they have bad memory, they're rigid, they need people to help them, they can't use computers. Is there the stereotype here about them using computers? I was going to say in the States, like I really miss seeing my grandparents. So when I talk to my grandparents, I call them through Skype, but I call their home phone. Like my mom, she actually has Skype, so I can see my mom, I can see my sister, I can see my dad. I can't see my grandparents. And I tried, like I bought them a computer. Here's your computer, use it. And they're like, no, we don't need that. We'll talk to you when you call us on the phone. Okay, bad drivers, worthless, and some positive ones too. Old people are wise. Individuals that hold these stereotypes, we wouldn't call them racists, but we would call them ageists. You could also call someone an ageist if they hold stereotypes about younger adults as well. Younger adults are irresponsible, they think the world owes them a living, they have too much sex and party too much. These are ageist stereotypes about younger adults. Okay, like we talked about before, a lot of stereotypes actually come from real-world data. So a lot of stereotypes are grounded in reality. So if we look at this graph, what we have on the y-axis is number of crashes per million miles traveled as a function of age. So here's age. So if you look at 16-year-olds, they have a lot of crashes, right? As they get older, they stop having as many crashes. Remember when we talked about the young male hypothesis? And how like the males, they want to compete and attract mates potentially, so they do stupid things like have races. So that part of that could explain this. So if we look, you see this general decrease as people get older. And then at about 65 or 70, all of a sudden, the number of crashes start going up again. Now this isn't the total number of crashes because there are way less 85-year-olds than there are 35-year-olds. So it's not total number of crashes, it's the number of crashes per million miles. Does that make sense? So, this has some serious policy implications. So in Texas, if someone wants to go for a driver's license, depending on the age that they are, they have to go through different hurdles. So people that are over 79 and want to get their driver's license renewed, they have to go in person. Other people, if you're below that age, you can just send in a form. Just mail it in and they'll send you your renewed driver's license. So older people are being discriminated against. Right? They actually have to go there. They also have to take a driving test if they're asked. So he comes in and he asks for a driver's license. And okay, he has one before. He's had a driver's license, so we know he can drive. Okay, here's your new driver's license. No problem. But his grandfather comes in, and his grandfather's over 79, and he wants to do the same thing. But instead of just saying, yep, you paid the money, here's your license, they say, I want to give you a driving test. Let's see how well you can actually drive. Again, this is discrimination. Also, licenses for adults over 85 expire sooner. So driver's licenses, they last for a certain amount of years. I don't know what the year limit is. But imagine that it's like 4 years for younger adults and 2 years for older adults. You can look on the web if you want to know the exact numbers. Why might this be better than just making it illegal to drive after a certain age? They don't have to discriminate in this way, right? If they want to discriminate, they could just say, holy crap, look at how the number of accidents take off after about 70. We're just going to say no one after 70 can drive. There's variations, yes?
People at that age perform differently.
Yeah, people at 70 perform very differently. So you have some healthy 70-year-olds who can drive very, very well, and you might have some 70-year-olds who have aged pathologically. What does it mean if something is pathological?
Caused by illness?
Yeah, like related to illness. So not normal aging, but if they're developing Alzheimer's or some other diseases that are associated with aging, their performance could be much, much worse. So rather than blanketly discriminating and saying, okay, everyone over a certain age, you can't drive, they give people tests. So this is a bit less discriminatory. They can make it even less discriminatory by making everyone have to take the driver's test and by making everyone a blind person. But whatever. Unlike the stereotypes that older adults can't drive, this implementation recognizes individual differences. It recognizes the variability. When we were talking about intelligence tests, we talked about looking at the variability of a certain age. This policy is taking into account a similar type of idea. So, we saw that we have these drops in the accident fatality rates, and we saw that they increased later. Why? Why would they increase later? Because of physical aging? What do you mean because of physical aging? What about the physical aging makes the accident fatality rates higher? So sometimes people get diseases where they start to tremble a little bit, right? And they lose some muscle control. So if you have less muscle control, you might not be able to drive as someone who has muscle control, right? Good. Anything else? So some cognitive processes aren't the same? Like, what do you mean?
Concentration.
Okay, so maybe older adults have a harder time focusing on something than younger adults. Anything else? Any other cognitive differences, perhaps?
Not cognitive, but I was going to say they get hurt more severely.
Yeah, so this isn't just, so this is the white dotted, this is all crashes, and these are fatal crashes. And older people, if their bodies are more fragile, they're going to end up in more of the fatal crashes, right? So this could just be an artifact. Notice that this goes actually up above the number of crashes, right? So maybe that's because their bodies have aged too much. Another hypothesis is related to cognitive abilities, and this is the general slowing hypothesis, and I'm sorry I gave you the answer up here. The general aging hypothesis basically says that we get slower as we age. And this goes very, very well with the stereotype. So, you've got some older adult who is walking in front of you, and you're trying to get around them, and you can't. Why? Because they're slower. In reaction time tests, so you put people in a driving simulator, and then you have like little kids run out in front of the street or balls run out in front of the street, and you measure how fast they are to hit the brake. They're slower than younger adults. So, yeah, okay, we get slower as we age. Our reaction speed comes down, decreases. Conduction speed decreases. Remember when we talked about axons and how this signal travels down the axon? And we talked about how myelin basically insulates the axon. And up to 25, you get more and more and more of this. And after 25, some of this myelin goes away. Which means that the speed with which the impulse can travel down the axon decreases as someone ages. So this has an effect, then processing speed should decrease. And this explains a wide range of deficits. And it explains potentially why they can't drive as well, because they can't respond as quickly when someone pulls out in front of them. They can't walk as fast because it takes more time for the signal potentially to get down to their feet to tell them how to move. So this could explain a lot of stuff. So we can test this idea. So Ratcliffe, Lepar, and McCune, they did this interesting study. What did they do? How did they test it? Really, really easy. The what? A brightness test. Yes, they did a brightness test. They did a different test before that.
Yeah,
They test the brightness and the image.
What did they do before that though?
they send discriminate in RNs.
An R or an S. Yeah, so they asked people, is this an R or an S? This is a really easy task, right? If I show you an R for a second, you're going to say, duh, it's an R. Or duh, it's an S, right? So again, we want to limit how long people see this. So we show them an R or an S for a brief amount of time. And we see how accurate they are, how fast they're able to respond. And compared to younger adults, how do they do in this task? They do worse. How do they do after they practice? More equal what? They perform the same way after practice with this R or this S task. Now, if general slowing is correct, they should be slower, and they are. So this supports the general slowing hypothesis. Now, another test that they had people do is they just rapidly flashed a patch of light. And they asked people, is this light or is this dark? Okay? Now think about what you would need to do in order to do these two tasks. Which one is easier to do? The second one, maybe. Why? All you have to do basically is judge whether it's light or dark, right? Here you have to judge where the pieces are in relationship to one another. And not only when you have those pieces put together, then you have to remember what those pieces mean. Is this an R or an S? So this test, even though both of these tests seem really, really simple, this test is a bit easier. So what happens? When we first have older adults do this task, how do they compare to the younger adults? They're slower. More evidence for general slowing. After practice, what happens? Yeah, after practice, they perform at the same rate, with the same accuracy as the younger adults do, which suggests what about this general slowing hypothesis?
It's not that general.
That's exactly right. It's not that general. Just like stereotypes are these ideas that people have overgeneralized, the general slowing hypothesis really isn't that general after all. Because if it was, even after they have lots of practice, they should still be slower. Does that make sense? This suggests also that perhaps my reasoning behind, okay, I'm walking more slowly because it's taking more time for the message to get down at my foot is wrong, too. Why might they walk more slowly if really the speed is the same? We could measure the speed and see if it's the same or not, but we could also look to see if the difference in the speed in the signal is enough to account for the huge amount of slowing that you see in some older adults, right? What other reasons are there?
Maybe signals cannot go from brain to foot.
But the signals can go from the brain to the foot because you see they're walking, right? So the signals are getting there.
It's a problem of muscles and like this skeletal muscle, like they get weak.
So the muscles are weak, so they can't move their muscles with as much force, which means that they're not going to be able to accelerate as quickly, because acceleration is just force divided by mass, right? The mass is the same, the force is less, something like that. I don't know, this is psychology, not physics. But yeah, okay, maybe. Is there anything else?
I think because it's biological. However, they didn't take enough of themselves.
Maybe they didn't take care of themselves enough, so if they exercise a lot, as they got older, then they'd still be able to go quickly? Possibly.
I think there's a problem with the brain.
There could be a problem with the brain. Anything else? I'm looking for a really simple explanation. There's a big difference between how I act when I walk down an icy sidewalk and how my children act when they walk down an icy sidewalk.
They tend to be more careful because they're afraid of the possible consequences if they fail.
Yeah, so older adults if their bodies are weaker, if they know that if they fall there are going to be bigger consequences, broken hips and other things like this, then that might be a really good reason to slow down, right? Who can run faster, me or my kids? I can. Who walks slower on an icy street?
You?
Me! It's not because my brain isn't working faster or that my muscles are weaker. It's because I know that being 6'2" or 6'3", if I fall, it's going to hurt a lot, right? So I've slowed down for reasons other than general slowing.
Actually, I disagree with this.
Huh?
I disagree with this.
Okay, go ahead.
If this was correct, then suppose there's a car, I'm an old person, a car is going to me, then I would unconsciously like run because my life would be much more outer, but we don't see that.
Oh man, that's great. So his idea is basically, if we're more concerned about being injured, then if there's like a car coming at us, we're going to be even faster to run away, right? So what does that suggest? Does this mean that my hypothesis is just garbage? What else could it be?
I think it's also part of the social schema. However,
Part of the social schema?
Yes.
So there's a social schema that adults are slow. So like they start walking in there like, oh, I better slow down today. I don't want anyone to...
No, because okay, there was an Indian guy who was very old and he ran really good because he challenges. But if somebody takes care of his health and does a lot of exercise, he can overcome that. But if he doesn't, then he will reach a stage where it's a fact of life that he is slow. Yes, there is a signal going to his limbs, but however, it's not as quick as it would be.
So possibly it's a whole lot of things, right? It could be partially that the signal takes longer to get there, or is less strong when it gets there. Part of it could be that the muscles can't respond as well because they're older, they've atrophied from disuse. But part of it could also be fear, right? So all of these things could be coming together. All right, so physical changes can slow older adults down, decrease muscle mass and bone density. Stereotype threat can slow older adults down. Maybe not so much in the when they're walking in day-to-day life, but in what situation could stereotype threat affect how fast they perform? Talking? So, if I'm a younger adult and you're an older adult and I ask you a question, if stereotype threat is coming into play, what is he thinking about? Partially.
He's challenging my skills.
Yeah, he might be thinking that I have this stereotype that he's going to be slow. And by thinking about how I'm going to perceive him, and by him trying to work on not being slow because of what I'm thinking, he's not focusing on the question and just answering. Does that make sense? So, possibly, stereotype threat can come into play too. Another situation, like with this R or S task, if I'm giving this to you, and I'm a college student. Most of the people running psychology experiments are college students, not the college professors. The college professors get people to run the experiments in their lab for them. So young college students give these tests to people, right? So I'm a young college student, I say, okay, please press the R or the S. Now, if they think that this is potentially a measure of how quick they are or how intelligent they are, they might bias themselves in one direction or another. I remember when I would take psychology experiments before I started making my own, I used to try to figure out, like, what is this testing? Are they trying to see how smart I am? Okay, they want to see how smart I am. I'm going to be really, really smart. I'm going to make sure I get everything right. Okay, here's a perfect example. This one time I was given a psychological test. So as graduate students are learning how to give tests, they often sample and like test their peers. So someone gave me this test and I didn't know what it was about. And all you're supposed to do is just draw this figure. It said, here's a picture. I want you to draw it. So I said, okay, like, what do you want me to focus on? Do you want me to have like an exact representation of it? Or do you just want me to draw a quick overview? They're like, you know, just draw the picture. So it took me like 5 minutes to draw this really, really simple picture. Because I want to make sure every line was the same length and every angle was identical. And so I did really bad on this test because I wanted to be really accurate instead of being fast. So if the older adults are thinking that this is testing how smart they are, how intelligent they are, they might want to take extra time to make sure that they get it right. Also, older adults have less practice doing speeded tasks. Lots of us have lots and lots of practice doing speeded tasks. We go play video games on the internet. Oh, here comes something, jump now, right? We do speeded things, we take tests, where time often is a factor. You have to work quickly, right? With older adults, they aren't regularly doing these same types of things, so they have less practice than you do. So there's a statement, use it or lose it, right? So potentially this can apply to practice too. All right, finally pathology. So let's talk about Alzheimer's disease. So what is Alzheimer's disease? It's a brain disease. How do you tell if someone has Alzheimer's or not? They can't remember. So if I can't remember something, does that mean I have Alzheimer's?
No, I'm living for it in whole long time.
What do you mean?
I mean, the Alzheimer's, if a person who has Alzheimer's, they can think, yeah, they think, but it's not what they can use. They can think very well, they can behave, and they lose their memory in a long time.
So they lose their memory for a long time? So, does anyone want to help her?
Not
Yeah.
to remember new information, short time.
They have a hard time learning new information. They have a lot more problems with memory than the average person does. Probably everyone in here has had a memory problem at some point, right? So with Alzheimer's, it's not just that you have a memory problem, but that you have a memory problem that's way beyond what is normal or average in the population. Does that make sense? So Alzheimer's disease is a disease that causes dementia, which is a chronic or persistent disorder of mental processes caused by disease or injury. So this can affect things like memory. This can affect things like learning new information. This can affect things like decision making. I have 2 different cards that you can pick from. Pick a card, pick a card. You win $10. Okay, pick another card. You lose 20. Pick another one. You win 5. Pick another one. You lose 20. If the cards are set up in a certain way, it can be difficult possibly to immediately identify which is the better choice, right? But over repeated exposure to the different outcomes, you can figure out that, oh, on average I might only be getting 5 over here, but on average I'm losing 10 over here, right? So I can make my decisions better if I can keep all of that stuff in mind and build up a representation of the test. And people with Alzheimer's disease have more trouble with this type of stuff. And this is a lot more than the normal problems that everyone has from time to time. I make lots of poor decisions, but I don't make nearly as many poor decisions as I would if I had Alzheimer's disease. So, interestingly, Alzheimer's disease isn't like, it's not certain that the person had it until after they die. So older adults, this is a big problem because diagnosing someone with Alzheimer's disease is really tricky. My wife used to work at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in St. Louis, and they would give these tests. And what they would do is they would give these people the tests and then take a reasonable guess at whether or not the person had Alzheimer's or not, and then wait for the people to die and cut up their brains. What would they be looking for? plaques and tangles. They're looking for plaques and tangles. And Alzheimer's disease is a collection of these plaques and tangles which disrupt neural communications and destroy neurons. So just because someone is having a lot of problems, even more than normal, with memory and decision making, they might not necessarily have Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease can only be definitively diagnosed after the person is dead. What's the good news?
Symptoms can be like cured.
Okay, when can the symptoms be cured? Curing is a very powerful word. But I would say symptoms could be reduced and potentially even slightly reversed. I don't know about completely eliminating any problems, but what can help Alzheimer's patients? Or what could stop you from developing Alzheimer's?
Having control of the environment.
Having control of the environment, self-efficacy, maybe. Anything else?
Mental exercise.
Mental exercise. Well, what are these called? There's a funny name for it. Neurobics. Have you guys heard of neurobics? Have you guys heard of aerobics? Aerobics. It's like this, right? Whee, whee. So neurobics is like basically exercising your mind, playing chess, going out with people. There are lots of things that people can do to stop the decline, slow it, or potentially reverse it. So a lot of the sources from the study guide mention similar things, diet and lifestyle. Actually, I should probably take smoking off of there. Nicotine can actually decrease the likelihood that you develop Alzheimer's. So smoking will increase the likelihood that you die of a heart attack, but it can decrease the likelihood that you develop Alzheimer's. So that's one good reason to smoke. But other things, alcohol, let's say, exercise, socializing, some other things are a little less usual, like neurobics and control, which leads to self-efficacy. So diet and exercise has a lot of direct health benefits, right? Can decrease your blood pressure, decrease cholesterol, increase your strength. If you're stronger, you should be able to move faster, right? Indirect psychological benefits, there are lots of them. You get this sense of control. If you're working out regularly and exercising and you feel like you can do things, then you're more likely to go outside of your home to the grocery store and pick up your own food. You're more likely to go out and meet friends. Socializing, what benefits do friends do? Or do friends have? How could having friends help Alzheimer's disease, or help stop Alzheimer's disease?
You're more active.
So if you hang out with friends, you're more active. Your brain is working. Because rather than sitting at home, not interacting with other people, I'm with my friends and I'm talking to them. Did you hear who won the football match? Oh, Galatasaray did. Yay! Did you hear what the Fenerbahce fans did? No! Oh, they did some crazy stuff. Oh, that's horrible. So you can interact with people. Friends also can help you reduce stress. They help you with coping. They can identify problems. So if you're not talking with other people, maybe you would be less aware if you have a memory problem. But by having friends or family that you talk to, they might notice and they might say, hey, we think something's going on with your memory. Maybe you should go see a doctor, right? So a lot of times that people go seek treatment for an illness is not because that they pick up on it themselves, but because other people pick up on it for them. They offer accountability with keeping up with exercise. It's a lot easier to exercise when you have a group of people going together. And it gives you opportunities to practice language, critical thinking, if you debate politics and things like that. Planning, you have to make plans in the future. What are you going to do next Friday? Oh, wait, that interferes. I'm supposed to go see this recital of my granddaughter. Right? So you can involve in a lot more processes when you include friends into this. So this is sort of a natural form of neurobics. what is neuroplasticity? What does it mean if something is plastic? Why is plastic so great? In the movie The Graduate, the young, who is it, is it Dustin Hoffman? Yeah, the young Dustin Hoffman is told to go into plastics and make a lot of money. Right. Plastic is flexible. What can you make out of plastic?
You can cut it off, you can change its shape.
You can change its shape. You can make a bottle of water. You can make a case for a projector. You can make a car body. You can do lots and lots of stuff with plastics. Plastics are capable of being molded. They're capable of adapting. So if we think about homeostasis, the brain needs to adapt to different circumstances, right? If you just stay at home and sit in front of TV all day long, your brain will adapt to that. If instead you're in college and you're constantly having to learn new things and to be tested on new things, your brain will adapt to that. Learning a new language, exercising, all these things create opportunities for the brain to adjust what it's doing in light of environmental situations. So what is the phantom limb? This is pretty cool, actually.
Having a feeling is that the limbs that has been cut away is still existing.
Yeah, so lots of times with like soldiers, they'll get injured and they have to have a limb amputated. So with a phantom limb, like their leg will be gone, but they sometimes will still feel like their leg is there. And there are special situations when this happens more often. So imagine that I had my hand cut off, all right? On the brain, did we talk about the homunculus? Back? No? Okay, so on the brain, different parts of the bodies are represented by different brain tissue. And the part of the brain that represents your left hand is really close to the part of your brain that represents the left side of your face. So if I lose my left hand, the neurons that are basically sending signals from the left part of my face, they can start branching out and making new connections. Some of those connections were previously held by my hand, right? But the hand's not there anymore. So what happens is someone strokes a person whose left hand has been removed, their face, they might feel like, you're touching my hand, even though the hand is no longer there. So the brain is basically reorganizing itself. It's not getting input from the hand, so we don't need to waste this tissue representing it. So we can start representing other body parts. Yeah, neurons previously representing those areas are slowly rewired for new processes. I'd like to do a demonstration. I'm going to write my name, okay? William. Chocolate. Why can I write my name so well?
Practice.
Practice. I've had a lot of practice with what? With writing my name with what?
Your hand.
With my hand. That's exactly right. So let's try to write my name with my foot. Choke is that? Why is it like that?
Because you've not been using it before.
That's right. I don't have practice writing my name with my foot, right? So people often who have like spinal cord injuries where they lose the use of their arms and their feet, they will often develop other strategies. So they'll start learning to write with their lips. I'm not going to write with my lips. That's even grosser. Or maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, if I started working a lot with my feet trying to write, eventually I would be able to write my name just as well, maybe even better with my foot. As this process would happen, I would devote more and more brain tissue to representing my foot. Musicians often develop much larger representations of their fingers than non-musicians do. Why? They use their fingers a lot more and a lot more precisely. than non-musicians do. So this indicates that our brain is plastic. An important thing, not just for aging, but for life, is to try to maintain control. So control, people with higher amounts of control are happier. People with higher amounts of control experience less helplessness. So in an interesting experiment, they took a group of older adults and they said, we want some young people to come and visit you guys, right? Because friends are important. By socializing, this can decrease pathological aging. So let's give them people to talk to. So now half of the group of people, randomly assigned, get to pick when they meet this person to talk to. The other group has no control over anything. Which group does better? The group that has control does much better. Oh wow, we give them a little bit of control. They're still seeing people for the same amount of time, but because they have control over when, they end up doing much better. Now this is just in the short run. What happened when that control was taken away? So like a lot of experiments, they stop at some point, right? We have our data, thank you very much, we're taking the young people away from you, have fun. Which group of people did worse?
The one who previously had control.
Yeah, the group that previously had control, after they had the control stripped away, they ended up getting sicker and dying sooner than the other group. Remember when we talked about allostasis and how you get this big bump when you gain or lose something, and then thanks to the hedonic treadmill, you slowly come back up? But by losing that control, I mean, think, both groups, we have someone to talk to. Both groups go up, right? The one group goes up more because they have more self-efficacy. When you take that away, it's like, holy crap. So the group that had the control more, not only do they lose the interaction, but they lose the self-control too, and they end up doing much worse. So if you have older adults in your lives who require some care, try to give them control. Ask them what they want to do, where they want things to be put, and they'll end up being much happier. Next class, we will talk about Freud's unconscious.